This is Jared Kushner, President Trump's son-in-law and architect of some of America's most controversial Middle East deals. He now has a direct financial stake in your favorite games: EAFC, Battefield, Madden NFL, The Sims. They're all part of his investment portfolio now. On September 29, 2025, Saudi Arabia's public investment fund announced the acquisition of Electronic Arts for $55 billion, the largest leveraged buyout in history. Kushner's fund, Affinity Partners, is a key partner alongside American private equity firm Silver Lake.
Video game maker Electronic Arts announcing a $55 billion deal to go private in what is set to be the largest leveraged buyout deal in Wall Street history, led by the Sovereign Wealth Fund of Saudi Arabia.
As you can see from this chart, EA's stock traded at $168 per share before rumors leaked on September 26th, but the acquisition price was $210 per share. That's a 25% premium. EA's total market value jumped from $47 billion to $55 billion practically overnight. Take a look at this. This is the second largest gaming acquisition in history. No competing bidders existed to force that price higher. Saudi Arabia chose to overpay by billions. When someone deliberately pays extra for something they could negotiate cheaper, they're not buying what's on the price tag. They're buying something money usually can't purchase. The overpayment reveals the real transaction. Saudi Arabia, through Kushner's political connections and this carefully structured deal, just bought access to 700 million players worldwide. The price tag tells a story the press releases never will. Three partners bought EA. Each brings something different. Together, they've structured a deal that serves power more than profit. This acquisition marks a historic shift for EA. After 36 years as a publicly traded company, EA is going private. All shareholders will be fully bought out at $210 per share, receiving cash for their stakes. The company will be delisted from Nasdaq, but the headquarters will remain in Redwood City, California, under CEO Andrew Wilson's continued leadership. For EA, this means no more quarterly earnings reports, no more public scrutiny, just the priorities of these three new owners. Saudi Arabia's Public Investment Fund, or PIF, controls over $1 trillion under Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman's direct authority. PIF already owned 9.9% of EA. They're rolling that stake into this deal. The total financing breaks down to $36 billion in equity from the three partners combined, with $20 billion in debt committed by JP Morgan Chase. Silver Lake manages $110 billion in assets and contributed a significant portion of that $36 billion equity. Like any good private equity firm, their specialty is financial engineering. They buy companies, load them with debt, cut costs ruthlessly, and extract maximum returns. They did it with Dell. They've done it dozens of times. Now they're doing it with EA. Their role here is clear: deliver profits fast. Then there's Kushner. His fund, Affinity Partners, is the smallest of the three but carries the most political weight. The fund launched in January 2021, the moment he left the White House. Within months, Saudi Arabia invested $2 billion directly into his fund. What makes that investment remarkable is what happened behind closed doors. On June 30th, 2021, Saudi Arabia's own investment advisors assessed Kushner's firm and called it unsatisfactory in all aspects. They criticized the strategy, they recommended rejection. Days later, Mohammed bin Salman personally overruled every single objection and approved the $2 billion anyway. Why? Because Kushner spent 4 years as Trump's senior advisor shaping Middle East policy. He negotiated the Abraham Accords, the diplomatic agreement that normalized relations between Israel and several Arab nations, including Saudi Arabia. This means Kushner helped broker peace deals that fundamentally reshaped Middle East alliances, putting Saudi Arabia and Israel on speaking terms for the first time in decades. He built a personal relationship with Mohammed bin Salman that transcended normal diplomacy. When Kushner left government, that relationship became worth billions. Now it's generating returns. But there's a shadow over this partnership. The CIA concluded with high confidence that Mohammed bin Salman personally ordered the murder and dismemberment of journalist Jamal Khashoggi in 2018. The same man who ordered that killing now signs entertainment deals with Trump's son-in-law.
They are both writing checks, that is, Kushner's firm and Silver Lake, but the check from the PIF, in addition to the 9.9% that they already own of EA, is by far the largest single part of that overall $36 billion. And that's why I say, essentially, this is the Saudis taking control.
The timeline tells its own story. Talks started quietly in spring 2025, months before any public hint. The Wall Street Journal finally leaked it on September 26th, and EA stock jumped 15% before trading got halted. But by then, the deal was already locked in. The leak was just theater. The deal structure reveals the pressure EA is about to face. $55 billion total, $36 billion in equity, $20 billion in debt from JP Morgan Chase. That's an enormous debt load for any company. Annual interest repayment estimate, $20 billion times 6% average private lending equals $1.2 billion per year in financial pressure. EA now has to generate massive cash flow just to make interest payments. When private equity loads a company with debt, creativity and long-term thinking die first. Short-term profit extraction becomes everything. Saudi Arabia paid billions extra. Kushner's fund is positioned to profit massively. They're buying political access, cultural influence, and international legitimacy through one of America's biggest entertainment brands. But the question remains, why do they need gaming this desperately? In 2016, Saudi Arabia launched Vision 2030. They gave themselves 14 years to completely transform their economy or face a demographic crisis they might never survive.
Launched in 2016 by Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, Vision 2030 is an ambitious strategic framework which seeks to reduce Saudi Arabia's dependence on oil and diversify the kingdom's economy.
60% of Saudi Arabia's population is under 30. That's 21 million young people who need jobs within 5 years. The traditional oil economy can't absorb them. If they fail to create alternatives by 2030, they face the kind of explosive youth unemployment that toppled governments across the Middle East during the Arab Spring. Saudi Arabia's total GDP reached $1.09 trillion in 2024. Oil still accounts for 22.3% of that, roughly $243 billion. As the world accelerates away from fossil fuels, that revenue model collapses. Vision 2030 represents their closing window to build new industries before oil dependency becomes a death sentence for their economy. They're not just investing in gaming, they're building tourism, entertainment infrastructure, technology sectors, and massive construction projects. Gaming is just one piece of a much larger economic transformation. But Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman has made gaming intensely personal. In September 2022, he launched the National Gaming and Esports Strategy with specific, unforgiving targets. Gaming must contribute $13.3 billion to GDP and create 39,000 jobs by 2030. When MBS champions something this publicly, failure becomes a referendum on his power. He can't afford to lose. Saudi Arabia already has one of the world's most valuable gaming markets. Over 2/3 of the kingdom's population, about 25.8 million people, are gamers, and the domestic gaming market generates approximately $1.2 billion annually. More importantly, Saudi Arabia's gaming market is expanding at nearly 8% annually, outpacing the global average by roughly double. Global growth sits at around 3 to 4% per year. This robust growth is driven by strong local demand, a young tech-savvy population, and supportive government initiatives to develop the gaming ecosystem. Gaming was chosen partly because it's exploding faster than any other entertainment sector. But there's a deeper reason. Gaming is interactive. Players spend hundreds of hours in these worlds, forming emotional attachments to characters and stories. Control the games, and you shape how an entire generation thinks about relationships, identity, politics, and culture. Movies are passive. Games turn players into participants in the narratives they're absorbing. Saudi Arabia has systematically built influence across the entire industry through Savvy Games Group, the investment arm of the Public Investment Fund. Savvy received $37.8 billion in 2022, the largest gaming investment fund ever created. Here's where the money went. Scopely for $4.9 billion in July 2023. Scopely is a Los Angeles-based mobile gaming publisher behind massive hits like Monopoly Go, which generated $1 billion in revenue in 2023 alone, Star Trek Fleet Command, and Marvel Strike Force. They're the #1 mobile games company in the United States. Niantic Games, acquired by Scopely, owned by Savvy, for $3.5 billion in March 2025. Niantic created Pokemon Go, one of the most successful mobile games in history with over 100 million unique players annually since 2016. The deal also included Pikmin Bloom, Monster Hunter Now, and Niantic's social gaming platforms Campfire and Wayfarer. ESL Faceit Group, acquired for $1.5 billion in 2022. These are two of the world's largest esports event organizers, based in Cologne, Germany. They run professional gaming tournaments and leagues globally. Through this acquisition, Saudi Arabia now controls the infrastructure of competitive gaming itself. Beyond outright acquisitions, the PIF has taken strategic stakes in Nintendo, 7.54% ownership, making them one of Nintendo's largest shareholders, plus positions in Capcom, Take-Two Interactive, and Nexon. They're building systematic control over the entire gaming ecosystem. EA represents the ultimate prize though. EAFC reaches more people annually than almost any soccer broadcast on the planet. The Sims alone has accumulated 500 million players across all versions. Madden NFL dominates American football gaming. Owning a major American publisher also delivers instant international legitimacy. EA's brand positions Saudi Arabia as a serious industry player rather than an autocratic outside disruptor trying to buy influence. Through the PIF-owned Savvy Games Group, the kingdom now ranks among the world's most powerful gaming entities. It helps their image too. Amnesty International has a term for this strategy: sports washing, using entertainment and sport to whitewash human rights abuses. These gaming investments are happening while political activists vanish into prisons and dissidents face execution. They're deliberately buying youth approval and cultural legitimacy with money extracted by an authoritarian regime. Kushner's involvement connects every piece. His relationship with MBS made this deal structurally possible. His fund stands to profit enormously from it, and the content EA creates, particularly around LGBTQ+ representation, flatly contradicts everything Saudi law enforces. That contradiction raises the unavoidable question: what happens to those games now? The video game industry today is one of the world's largest entertainment sectors, with a global market value approaching $190 billion and an audience of 3.6 billion players, roughly 60% of all internet users. And it's growing fast. Analysts are projecting the global value will be between $300 and $600 billion by 2030. By acquiring EA, Saudi Arabia has signaled that it intends to not just be a participant, but a leader in this industry. EA's reach is massive. The company's player network reached 700 million players as of 2023, nearly 1 in 5 gamers worldwide. Let's take a look at their major franchises. The Sims has sold 200 million copies across all versions. Battlefield has sold 57 million copies. Need for Speed has sold 150 million copies. EA Sports franchises like Madden and EAFC reaches 150 million players annually. Some of these popular games will undergo significant changes because of the takeover. The franchise that will be hit the hardest is The Sims, a game that has pioneered LGBTQ+ inclusion for 25 years, featuring same-sex relationships, gender customization, and pride celebrations when no other mainstream game would. Saudi Arabia enforces the death penalty for homosexuality. Sharia law criminalizes transgender identity. These two realities cannot coexist. The precedent already exists. In July 2018, The Sims free play was banned across Saudi Arabia, UAE, Egypt, Kuwait, Qatar, and Oman, specifically for LGBTQ+ content. Back then, countries banned the game. Now the owners control what gets developed. Prior LGBTQ+ related restrictions have already appeared in EA titles like Dragon Age Inquisition and Mass Effect 3. Causing deletions of character dialogue and pride content across Middle East and North Africa markets. Every Sims expansion with LGBTQ+ content becomes a potential target. EAFC's Rainbow Stadium items could vanish from future versions. Battlefield and Mass Effect built their reputations on diverse relationships and progressive themes. Future installments might emphasize very different narratives. The censorship will creep in slowly. It'll be subtle. Features that don't align with the creative vision. Content that gets deprioritized. By the time players realize what's missing, it'll be too late. But censorship is only half the threat. That $20 billion debt load creates its own disaster. Leveraged buyouts demand fast cash generation. Widespread layoffs across EA's development teams, experimental games and new intellectual property, original game concepts and franchises, getting killed before development starts. Shorter production cycles forcing less polished products to market. Social media exploded with fears from players who'd found acceptance in EA's games. Fan communities built around The Sims' inclusivity are watching their safe spaces get sold to their oppressors. Gaming journalists warn about esports tournaments relocating to Saudi Arabia, where LGBTQ+ players would face actual criminalization for attending. If this acquisition succeeds without any resistance, every gaming company becomes a target. The precedent gets set. Authoritarian money can buy American culture, and nobody stops it. You might say entertainment has become a weapon for authoritarian power projection. Saudi Arabia has systematically built influence across the gaming industry. Their gaming company, Savvy Games Group, now ranks among the world's most powerful gaming entities and are beginning to match the likes of Tencent, Microsoft, and Sony in terms of reach. Other authoritarian governments are studying this exact playbook. China has led the way through Tencent, the world's biggest game company, which owns Riot Games, League of Legends outright, holds a 40% stake in Epic Games, Fortnite, and has invested in over 130 gaming companies globally. Chinese companies operate under the 2017 National Intelligence Law, which forces them to cooperate with government intelligence operations. When authoritarian nations weaponize entertainment for political purposes, artistic freedom dies first. The EA deal still requires approval from CFIUS, the Committee on Foreign Investment in the United States. A foreign government seizing control over platforms reaching 700 million users should trigger intense scrutiny, but Kushner's involvement and the fact that Trump is the president complicate that regulatory picture. The deal is scheduled to close in early 2026, pending regulatory approval. That leaves months for resistance to build. Pressure on regulators, demands for reconsideration, mobilization of the gaming community itself. Your favorite franchises just became bargaining chips in a geopolitical power struggle you never asked to join. The question was never whether this would affect the games you love. The question is how much creative freedom survives and how fast you'll start seeing the changes. What franchise are you most worried about? Drop your thoughts in the comments below.